In the aftermath of World War I, a continent lay in ruins, both physically and spiritually. The old order had crumbled, leaving a void that many sought to fill. Germany was a nation in turmoil, defeated, humiliated, and desperately searching for a new identity amidst the rubble of its imperial dreams. The weight of the Treaty of Versailles bore down on the German people, fostering resentment and a yearning for a return to greatness. Amid this chaos and uncertainty, the Thule Society emerged in Munich in 1918, a city simmering with political unrest and radical ideas. It was a peculiar blend of occultism, steeped in folklore, and fueled by radical nationalism, a potent and dangerous combination in the volatile climate of post-war Germany. Members gathered in secret, often in dimly lit rooms, obsessed with restoring a lost German greatness, not through conventional politics, but through mystical means and the supposed power of ancient knowledge. At the center of this shadowy organization was Rudolf von Sebottendorf, a self-styled baron, shrouded in mystery and intrigue. He was a devotee of esoteric traditions, a man who claimed to possess secret wisdom passed down through generations. Sebottendorf infused the group with elaborate rituals and a dangerous racial dogma, laying the foundation for its dark ideology. The Thule Society demanded rigorous proof of Aryan ancestry from its initiates and swore its members to absolute secrecy and unwavering loyalty, binding them together in a shared and increasingly fanatical purpose. Their mission extended far beyond mere political change. They sought nothing less than a spiritual rebirth of what they considered a superior, so-called master race, destined to rule. The group quickly became a magnet, attracting Munich's most radical elements on the far-right fringe, mixing dangerous conspiracy theories, the ever-present threat of violence, and a warped interpretation of ancient Germanic myth. As Bavaria teetered on the edge and declared a socialist republic, the Thule Society saw its opportunity and boldly positioned itself as a staunch counter-revolutionary force, ready to take action. They began stockpiling weapons in secret caches and actively forming paramilitary Freikorps units, composed of disgruntled soldiers and right-wing extremists. They weren't just theorists confined to dusty books. They were becoming active militants, prepared for armed conflict, dangerously blending their mystical beliefs with the brutal reality of political violence. Their twisted vision was of a holy war against the perceived enemies of the German Volk, socialism, Judaism, which they falsely blamed for all of Germany's ills, and the forces of modernity, which they saw as a corrupting influence on traditional German values. These were the scapegoats they blamed for Germany's devastating collapse and its subsequent humiliation on the world stage. And so, in the gathering shadows of post-war Munich, a city rife with discontent and ripe for exploitation, the Thule Society quietly but steadily became a dangerous and destabilizing force, fusing ancient myth with modern militancy in a toxic brew. Their dark legacy, fueled by hatred and delusion, would soon reach far beyond the confines of their secret meetings and whispered oaths, leaving an indelible stain on the history of the 20th century. At the heart of the Thule Society's beliefs, a cornerstone of their very identity, was the legend of Thule. It wasn't just a story. It was the foundation upon which they built their entire worldview. A mythical northern homeland, a land perpetually shrouded in ice and profound mystery. This wasn't just any northern territory. It was a place of origins, a source of power. Ancient Greeks, in their explorations and cartography, imagined Thule as the very edge of the known world, the boundary where reality faded into the unknown. But for the Thule Society, it became something far grander. The lost cradle of a superhuman Aryan race, a place where gods and mortals intertwined. They claimed that Thule's godlike giants, beings of immense strength and wisdom, were the direct ancestors of all pure Germanic peoples, the wellspring of their inherent superiority. They believed that over centuries this original wisdom and power had been diluted, scattered and lost through the mixing of blood and the passage of time. Therefore, the search for Thule was far more than a geographical expedition. It was a spiritual quest, a journey into the past to reclaim what had been lost. It was a desperate attempt to reclaim this imagined racial greatness, to restore the perceived glory of their ancestors. Drawing heavily on the esoteric teachings of Theosophy, with its emphasis on hidden knowledge and ancient wisdom, and the rich tapestry of Norse myth, filled with gods, heroes, and epic battles, and even embracing pseudoscience like the bizarre and unfounded world ice theory, which posited ice as the fundamental building block of the universe. The society constructed a bizarre and elaborate cosmology, a distorted view of the universe, all to justify their deeply held beliefs and prejudices. In this twisted worldview, Thule became more than just a place. It became a potent symbol of legitimacy, a validation of their claims. It served as a divine origin story, a fabricated history designed to fuel and legitimize German nationalism and a sense of racial superiority. By falsely tracing their roots back to this lost paradise, this mythical homeland of Thule, they manufactured a narrative that granted them a sacred and unquestionable right to rule, a divine mandate to lead. This potent myth, this fabricated history, transformed their political aspirations into a holy crusade, a righteous war against perceived enemies. It elevated their ambitions far beyond mere political goals, casting them as a mission of destiny, a divinely ordained path. The legend of Thule, with all its fantastical elements, gave them a shared purpose, a common goal to strive towards. It fostered a sense of unity, a feeling of belonging and shared identity that bound them together. And perhaps most dangerously, it instilled in them a sense of historical inevitability, the belief that their triumph was preordained and unstoppable. In the turbulent aftermath of World War I, it was a seductive and intoxicating story for a nation desperately searching for meaning, for a sense of pride and direction. And tragically, this dangerous myth would soon be weaponized on a national scale, used to manipulate and control an entire population. Beneath the myths, the Thule Society's daily reality was grounded in militant nationalism and virulent anti-Semitism. They saw history as a cosmic struggle, noble Aryans versus a demonic Jewish enemy. Aryan supremacy was their creed. Germanic peoples as the purest, most creative race destined to dominate. Their meetings obsessed over racial purity, eugenics, and the dangers of contamination. The protocols of the Elders of Zion became their proof of a global Jewish conspiracy. Jews were blamed for Germany's defeat, communism, and moral decay. This paranoia justified violence and insurrection. The Thule Society became a paramilitary force, plotting assassinations and armed revolt. Their headquarters was a command center for counter-revolution, uniting extremists under a banner of hate and myth. These toxic ideas would soon find a much larger stage. The Thule Society's true impact was as the incubator for the Nazi Party. Its members and ideas bridged esoteric racism and modern fascism, providing the network and ideology for Hitler's rise. Key Nazis like Rudolf Hess and Alfred Rosenberg were shaped by Thule's doctrines. Rosenberg's writings, echoing Thulean myths, became Nazi ideological foundations. The society directly helped found the German Workers' Party, the seed of the Nazi Party. Hitler, sent to investigate, quickly took over and transformed it into his own movement. Even the Nazi newspaper, the Völkischer Beobachter, began as a Thule propaganda sheet. The Thule Society supplied the Nazis with ideologues, structure, and their first propaganda machine. In the shadows, Thule midwifed the birth of the Third Reich. Its influence would echo through every symbol and policy that followed. The Thule Society, though short-lived, cast a long shadow. Its esoteric ideas and occult leanings found fertile ground in the burgeoning nationalist movements of the time. The Thule Society's legacy lived on, perhaps unexpectedly, in the symbols and myths of Nazism. The swastika, an ancient symbol with roots stretching back millennia, was already being used by Thule as a potent Aryan emblem, a visual representation of their imagined racial heritage. It then became the Nazi flag, a design reportedly suggested by a Thule member, thereby cementing the society's influence on the visual identity of the Third Reich. Thule's name itself, shrouded in mystery and whispers of ancient wisdom, became shorthand within certain circles for racial purity, a longing for a lost golden age, and a rejection of modernity. Their myths of a glorious past, a golden age of Aryan supremacy, and the concept of a sacred bloodline, untainted and powerful, profoundly shaped Nazi ideology, providing a pseudo-historical justification for their hateful agenda. This was especially true for figures like Heinrich Himmler, the architect of the SS, who was deeply fascinated by the occult and ancient Germanic traditions. Himmler, drawing inspiration from Thule's romanticized vision of the past, modeled the SS as a new knightly order, an elite guard dedicated to the ideals of racial purity and expansion. This order was steeped in elaborate ritual and a rigid racial doctrine, a Thulean vision, once confined to secret meetings and esoteric texts, now made terrifyingly real on a grand scale. By wrapping their political ambitions in the cloak of ancient myth, the Nazis were able to imbue their movement with an aura of destiny, a sense of historical inevitability, and a perceived sacredness that resonated with a population yearning for meaning and purpose. Symbols and legends, carefully curated and strategically deployed, became powerful tools of political manipulation, seducing a nation, promising a return to greatness, and offering a seductive vision of national rebirth rooted in a distorted interpretation of history. The Thule Society, in its embrace of the occult and its manipulation of historical narratives, showed the world how myth could be weaponized for political gain. Its success in influencing the Nazi Party and the unspeakable horror that followed would indelibly shape the trajectory of the Nazi regime and its devastating impact on the world. The line stretching from the clandestine meetings of a secret society to the systematic terror of a totalitarian state was tragically direct and ultimately deadly. Despite the Thule Society's influence, Hitler kept his distance. He shared their core beliefs but refused to join, wary of any group he didn't control. Early mentor Dietrich Eckart connected Hitler to Thule's circles, but Hitler was a political opportunist, absorbing their ideas, discarding their rituals. As the Nazi Party grew, Hitler distanced himself from occultism, presenting the party as modern and dynamic. He publicly mocked secret societies and suppressed them once in power. Freemasons, theosophists, and astrologers were banned. Thule's influence became an embarrassment. Even loyalists like Hess were sidelined for their mystical interests. The regime born from myth now sought to erase its occult roots. Hitler's pragmatism ensured the Nazi state belonged to him alone. While Hitler distanced himself, Himmler embraced Thule's legacy within the SS. The SS became a new knightly order, demanding proof of Aryan ancestry and practicing secret rituals at places like Wewelsburg Castle. Himmler's Ahnenwerber scoured the world for evidence of Aryan origins, blending pseudoscience with myth. The SS institutionalized Thule's racial fantasies, turning myth into policy. The belief in Aryan supremacy and the demonization of Jews became the ideological engine of the Holocaust. SS guards saw themselves as sacred warriors on a historical mission. The Thule Society's most extreme ideas were now state doctrine. Myth had become machinery for genocide. The blood of millions was the final legacy of Thule's vision. As the Nazis seized power, the Thule Society faded into obscurity. Its purpose as an incubator was fulfilled. Now it was redundant and even dangerous to the regime. Hitler suppressed all rival groups, demanding loyalty to himself and the state alone. Thule's secretive, aristocratic ways clashed with Nazi mass politics. Key figures like Sebottendorf were sidelined or died in obscurity. Others, like Eckart and Rosenberg, were consumed by the regime. By the mid-1930s, the Thule Society had vanished, absorbed and discarded by the monster it helped create. But its ideas lived on, metastasizing into the state religion of the Third Reich. Thule became a footnote, its story a warning about fringe ideas moving to the center of power. The creators of revolution were devoured by their own creation. The shadow they cast would haunt history. The Thule Society's story is a warning about the dangers of myth and conspiracy fueling politics. In times of crisis, seductive narratives offer easy enemies and false destinies. The society's blend of mysticism and hate gave violence a sense of higher purpose, paving the way for genocide. Dehumanization, born from myth, is a critical step toward atrocity. Fringe groups can shape mainstream politics. Thule provided the framework, personnel, and symbols for Nazism. Ideas from the shadows can capture the state. Today, as extremism and misinformation spread, Thule's tale is more relevant than ever. Conspiracy, racial myth, and nostalgia for lost glory remain potent tools for extremists. The path from occult lodge to totalitarian empire is a lesson we must not forget. The legacy of the Thule Society is a warning written in blood, one we must heed. For more, like, share, and subscribe.